Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Apple.
And I'm Rudy Luttrell.
And we are the Mystic Mentors. Today, we are going to be talking about competitive Magic. So Mr. Luttrell and I are going to be shuffling up and stepping away from the kitchen table just for a moment. And we are going to be talking about the pros and cons of competitive Magic. Looking at the cons first of competitive Magic, there are some I'm really familiar with, and I'm sure there's a lot of our viewers who are also familiar with these. We'll call them fears for lack of a better word. So let's talk about the fears. So the fears of competitive Magic actually all tied to two very basic areas. The first is self-worth. We all have
that's a big one. Yeah.
We all have different levels of self-esteem. I can say for myself that I never thought I was a very good player. Even if some people said, "Oh, you're a good player," I'd be like, "Well, you're just saying that." Right? In the back of my mind, I'm a polite guy. I'm not just gonna be like, "You're wrong," but I would think it. I will say, winning an RCQ did help. I'm not gonna pretend like,
right.
putting some proof in the pudding.
Winning the game, it can be really daunting going into these competitive tournaments, and then losing one tournament after another in sequence. It can be tough. So confidence is huge in that kind of like insecurity.
Right.
Yeah, that can be definitely a player against the motive.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So fear, specifically talking about self-worth and self-esteem, in other words, is one of the big gatekeepers of folks getting into competitive Magic. We know several players who have struggled with that, and some of them are on our team, and they've grown, and you'll meet them as we go along. All right. The second gate for the cons of fear is player judgment. I remember when I first started playing Magic, I was playing a casual game at my local game shop in Oregon. And I was sitting down, I got my cards in front of me, I'm just reading them. Someone had just handed me a deck. I didn't know what the cards did. And I was playing against my opponent, who was a much better player. He was like a known Magic player at that shop. So we were sitting there playing. I didn't know this guy very well. I just knew he was a good player, and I was like, I'm probably making mistakes all over the place. And as if to just validate all of those fears, another good player comes up right behind me, steers into my hand. Now, this is just a casual game. This isn't a tournament, so of course he's fine. And I didn't mind him walking up next to me. That wasn't an issue. But he walked up next to me, and he goes, "Hey, you know what to do here, right?" And in my mind, I was like, "No, I don't.
No.
I have no idea. Do I cast Spellbreaker Behemoth? Sure." So I slam it down, and then the look of disappointment in his eyes at my selection. People's judgments at that time are just so much more important than they actually should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, self-worth, player judgment, these are two of the biggest gatekeepers for the gatekeeping of fear for players. The second one is the most common one we hear about Magic. We hear about it complained on Reddit all the time, and we hear about it. Well, we also think about it all the time. At least I do.
I think about it all the time.
You think about it, but then you just kind of toss it in the back of your mind.
That's also true. I love this game.
You do. You love this game. And I do too, but even if someone loves that game, I think about it a lot. And that is, of course, price, right? Now, price is funny. It's a gatekeeper all of its own. So really, we just have two talking points on how price affects us, but also there's a kind of a myth or a falsehood around price. So first things first, there are certain stigmas that folks put to us spending an exorbitant amount of money, in some cases, on cardboard, which is fine until you stop and realize any luxury is expensive. Sports, right? How many of us know people that spend tons of money on sports paraphernalia? They don't even wear it, right? They just display it, right? The cardboard in your deck box, or maybe you've bought a very expensive card, you just put it up on your mantle.
One of my other hobbies is cars. Yes. I think I've put about equally the amount of money that I have into cars. So the price is going to be there with any hobby. I mean, you can't even go out to the movies without spending an exorbitant amount, because everyone knows that popcorn at movies is grossly unfair. But that's a net. If you want to have the full experience, you pay. But it doesn't have to be that way with Magic, and that's the thing about like competitive Magic too, is that there are so many options in a game like Magic that you're not just it's not the what everyone says is the pay to win.
Right, I hear that falsehood all the time. It's pay to win. It's like,
in fact, your RCQ deck was a quarter of the price of everyone else's that you got your win with.
Right. Turns out Goblin Chain Whirler and Call of the Death Dweller are $2 whole dollars. Moving on to the next one. the other sub price is actually not fiscal. It's not physical money. It's the social price, because this is a social game. There's that guy, right? That guy that exists, and everyone fears him. No one likes him. But funnily enough, I feel like at least for us in the competitive scene, everyone thinks that's where he lives. That's his home. That's his dwelling, his abode. And I actually haven't seen this guy very much. Not saying he doesn't exist, but most of the people I've met in Midwestern tournaments
really stand-up guys
are really stand-up guys, or at the very least decent people.
There's a lot of stigmas that come along with being a card game player, and through our travels, especially in the competitive tournaments, I feel like that, and it may not speak for your community, but definitely for ours, I think we all help to bring each other up to a really good standard of not only just like hygiene, but personality, like personal wise. Everyone seems to be extremely kind, extremely welcoming, and they're really forgiving for new players, because we personally have brought on like 6 new players that don't compete regularly into this game over the past year, and they've traveled with us to these big tournaments and stuff, and they've all said the same thing, which is all the players that we've met and that we've played with have been really, really accepting. That's not to say that all of them are, because as you said,
there are exceptions.
A few, but you can't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch.
So, having talked about some of those cons of Magic, either implied or actually existing, we'll take it over to the pros of Magic, what you can benefit from in this wonderful game of cardboard and squares.
A lot of these are going to be a parallel to one another. So the first thing I want to touch up on, of course, is going to be the social aspect of the game. A lot of my good friends that I've met and friends that I've carried with me for the longest time, especially after high school, I've met through this game. So I think it's really important just to, and nowadays especially, to get out of your house and just go talk to people and be in an element with other people in the room. I think that can't be understated. For me personally, it has gotten me over a lot of social anxiety that I've had going out and speaking to people and whatnot, even just our daily lives. The practice of going out and talking to people is good. It's healthy. It's in human nature.
Oh yeah, humans need to interact. It's just a part of who we are.
The pros and cons are so tightly knit that you can't, you'll eventually cross the tracks at some point.
It also really benefits players to think critically. Kind of going to that sharpness Rudy's talking about. The best Magic players I know definitely think 2 or even 3 turns ahead, or they look at branching paths of decision making, which is huge because, believe it or not, that's a skill you can apply anywhere. My day job's a school teacher. I try to teach my students that all the time, right? If you make this choice, what's going to possibly happen? If you choose this answer, how do you know it's the right one? If you got that student who didn't study like they should have for that test. Right. Because you can't help them, but you can sure teach them how to take tests, which is a skill in of itself.
I mean, most things will point in the same direction, that like having some kind of intricate problem-solving exercise is good for the brain. Absolutely. This game is perfect for that. And the last thing that I want to talk about as far as the pros, and this is for a lot of people that maybe played Commander, because I know a lot of you are going to be Commander based and you're just barely poking your heads into this competitive scene trying to see what it's about, is the mechanics. When I tell you that playing Magic on a competitive front has made me so much better in my casual games, that can't be understated. If you want to increase your win rate, especially against your friends, you should practice some of the more competitive elements of Magic. And so just having that exercise, that practice, has made me so much better at recognizing my triggers, at acknowledging different zones of the game at all times, and especially at managing resources and discipline with things like removal and or interaction. So all of these things combined just make you a better Magic player.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. As we exit the archives, the Mists and Minotaurs call on you, dear viewer, to step through the competitive gates. Don't let fear stop you. Don't let the price stop you. Okay? Any interest you have is going to have these. So these are not valid excuses then, and I'm not criticizing, because again, I have them, Mr. Luttrell's had them.
Yeah.
Every player feels them. Even the best player that you put up on that pedestal feels it.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So instead, we're going to invite you to step up the staircase of competitive Magic with us and push yourself to that prize on the other side, the social benefits, the mental benefits, the general health benefits that games like Magic can bring for you. And we would like to remind you, of course, to like and subscribe. Check out our channel down below in the description. Have a good night.
Peace out.